Most protein education are not tailored to the South Asian diet, leaving you under-muscled, undernourished, and completely in the dark. You don't know the real protein sources that build muscle, when to eat it, and how much. As someone who's helped over 1,000 South Asians sculpt their dream physique without giving up their traditional foods, there's so much more South Asians could be doing to increase their protein intake that's easy and fits into anyone's diet. Watch this video for the only South Asian specific video on protein, what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and how this all fits into a traditional diet if that's what you're following. So how much protein do we actually need to have? Think of your body like a house, and the bricks are the protein. But unlike a house that gets built once and then some minor tweaks and some iterations needed, which happens over years, your body breaks down and rebuilds every single day. Your muscles, your hormones, your skin, and even your hair, and every day you need enough bricks, aka your protein, to build it back up. If you don't have enough bricks to build it back up, you end up with walls that are patchy, holes in the carpet, things start to fall apart. And that's what happens to having enough protein. You become under-muscled, low energy, poor skin and hair, and protein isn't just for bodybuilders, this is for everybody. But here's the kicker, the amount's going to be more than you want it to be. It's going to require some adjustment because you might have not been brought up with the same habits needed to have a high protein diet. Everyone needs to hit that number and be intentional about it. Nobody ever says, oh, oops, I hit my protein target today by accident. At least at the beginning anyway. You're looking for your body weight in pounds and timesing by 0.7 and then doing that again by timesing by 1. That'll be the range of protein that you want to be hitting every day. And whatever your feelings are towards that number, you're going to need to do 3 things. Practice the amount, build up slowly if you think that's a lot compared to where you are right now, and you're going to need to spend more time tracking your protein intake through data to understand what you're looking at when you see food, to learn about how much you need and how much that really is. And ultimately find a structure that you can break this down each day to make it as part of your eating patterns. So how do I eat protein each day to my protein target? Imagine having this information now that you need to hit 170 grams of protein each day, for example. You've got a number, but you haven't got really what that entails and where to eat it. Do I have that all in one go for breakfast? Do I have 8 servings of protein each day? What types of food do I need to eat within my plans to hit that target the best way possible? So let's show you brick by brick to go through it of what you need from a protein perspective. So let's use the brick example again. If you were to get all your bricks of protein every single day, you're looking at around 20 to 30 grams of muscle being built on a day-to-day basis. That might not seem a lot, if anything, but combine that over a year's period or 2 years period, you're looking at a significant improvement of muscle mass everywhere. There used to be a story where old school bodybuilding actually met old school health and science research that you couldn't actually metabolize or utilize over 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal, as they said there'd be no additional benefit to that protein going in and you would just wee it out. They said this because of a part of the research that is up on the screen here. What we call muscle protein synthesis doesn't increase. But what that means is like you got the most out of that protein to get this muscle turnover to stimulate muscle growth or muscle retention. But that doesn't mean that the protein is going to waste. It just means that it's not going to increase how much muscle you build. So you can absorb more than 30 to 40 grams of protein and there be significant benefit to your brain, to your hair, skin and nails, to your cognitive performance, just not from muscle building. The amino acids within the protein will help with organ repair, hormone production, immune function, and even energy if needed. You can totally eat 50, 60, 70 grams of protein in one meal and you'll still get some benefit. It won't be wasted, it might just be used for different purposes beyond muscle building. So let's see how we can break up that for your daily eating. You've got your total bricks of protein needed per day. The easiest way to do this is split it over 4 to 5 servings per day. Otherwise, it's going to be a crazy amount of protein to eat in one go. But equally, you don't want to be eating every 2 hours to get your protein in. That's not very realistic. So here's how I would set it up. If you've got 180 grams to get over a 4 meal period, that's 45 grams. Another way that you could do that if you don't eat that much is 2 meals of 90 grams. Or 3 meals of 60 grams. And for those of you who love building muscle tissue and want to really maximize the process, you could do 5 meals of 36 grams, one of those meals coming after a workout around 1 to 2 hours afterwards. You don't need to fall into the myth that you need protein after a workout either. The workout anabolic window that used to be around 45 minutes is actually more towards the 3 to 4 hour marker. So you don't need to run out of the gym and bang a protein shake. As long as you've got 36 grams or a protein serving around about 4 hours afterwards, you're absolutely good. So the easiest way to look at protein is looking at what is your normal eating pattern and then working backwards on that. Sure, you're going to have to track it for a bit. Sure, you're going to have to understand those numbers for a bit. But once you've got that system in place, whether it's 90/2, 36/5, whichever way you fancy doing your meals, you just need to split it out over that time period. You can even do bunch in the morning, bunch in the evening, and have 2 meals in the daytime that are maybe not. And for those of you that have traditional foods throughout the day, whether it's dal, rajma rice, or chiles for breakfast, for example, dosa sambars, you're going to need to have high protein meals around that traditional meal. That's why I only recommend most people having like one traditional meal per day, so they have 3 to 4 other meals a day with high protein meals that are actually useful. Whether you have dinners that are more traditional, for example, rajma and chana, dal variations, or having dosa sambar, chile for breakfast type of things, which are significantly lower protein, you'll probably want to have significantly higher protein in other meals to make up the fact that you're having lower protein in another meal. But if you're wondering why I said that dal or rajma is a lower protein source, you just have to keep on watching. Because what sources of protein should you be using? But what if I told you that not all bricks of protein are made equally? And even if it has the illustrious title of high protein, but it won't build your house better. Some have the ability to build muscle and some don't. And therefore, the more time you spend eating the wrong protein bricks, the less muscle you build. And if there was a way that you could find out exactly the protein sources that build muscle tissue and the ones that don't, you'd want to know, right? So let's break that down. Like, you've got protein, but protein is made up of tiny blocks, smaller blocks of amino acids. There's 20 of them, but 9 of them are essential because we can't make them ourselves, and 11 of them we can make ourselves, and that's absolutely fine. So we need to get food for the 9. Isoleucine, valine, lysine, methionine. All the ones on the screen now have their benefits and the ones that are essentially that we need to get through food. And the last one here is called leucine, which helps build muscle tissue and repair. And it's the absolute superstar for building muscle. It tells your muscle, hey, it's time to grow. It activates a process called muscle protein synthesis, which is how your body builds muscle tissue. Think of leucine as the on switch to muscle growth, not just protein that you need. Experts say you need 2 to 3 grams per meal to help build that muscle stimulus. So that's around about 25 to 30 grams of high quality protein per serving. So let's break that on what that actually looks like. For example, 100 grams of chicken breast has around 2.7 grams of leucine. And now you're going to play a game of leucine or no leucine. Have you ever seen Deal or No Deal? I don't know if you're American or not, but UK, there's a show which is called Deal or No Deal, which is about opening a box to see if you want a deal or it's wrong. Terrible show, but I'm about to show you some food so we can play Deal or No Deal with the food itself. Leucine or no leucine for extra tofu. For extra firm tofu, leucine or low leucine, no leucine. At 100 grams, you're getting 0.6 grams of leucine, and in bigger quantities of 150 to 200 grams, you're only getting 1.2 grams. And like I said, you need 2.5 to 3 to turn the on button on for muscle protein synthesis. Leucine or no leucine for tempeh. For 100 grams, you get 1.1 grams of leucine. So if you double that and add 200 grams, you're probably going to get the amount of leucine that you need. So tempeh, good. So I'm going to put a picture here of cottage cheese because I actually ate it for breakfast this morning. I was really hungry. For 100 grams, you get 0.9 grams of leucine, but around about 10 grams of protein. So it's slightly the same as tofu, not amazing, but it's okay. Greek yogurt 0%, leucine or no leucine? Leucine. For 100 grams, you get 10 grams of protein and 1 gram of leucine, so 200 grams would get you your leucine threshold. Hey, Greek yogurt is the way to go. Now here we go at disappointing people. Chickpeas or chana, if you want to use its original name. Chana or chickpeas, 9 grams of protein per 100 grams and gives you 0.6 grams of leucine. That means you would have to eat over 300 grams of chickpeas to get that leucine. And just for reference points, that would be 400 calories, and that would be 3 of these in one serving, which is going to be very unrealistic. That's why having higher protein meals around your chana, your rajma meals are going to be super important. Chicken breast, 31 grams of protein per 100 grams and well over 2.5 grams of leucine per 100 grams. Big win. Big win. 1 can of tuna, 25 grams of protein and 2 grams of leucine. Big win. Obviously, some South Asians don't eat beef. I do, so I've put it here. 100 grams, 21 grams of protein, 2 grams of leucine. Big win as well for the beef. And I put this in because everyone thinks this is protein, but it's just fucking not. It's quinoa. So quinoa, I'm rereading the stats here. People think that quinoa is a protein. It's 4 grams of protein per 100 grams. So this is 200 grams. This has got 8 grams of protein in, or 12 on this one. This only has 0.6 grams of leucine, so you'd have to have 3 of these, which these are 380 calories per one, which means that you'd have to consume over 1,000 calories of quinoa to get your leucine. Then, well, your diet wouldn't last very long. You had 1,000 calories worth of quinoa every single day, would it? So not a great choice. Now, some other ones that you may be wondering about. Most people think that nuts are protein. The only one that has leucine in is peanuts, but the amount that you would have to eat to get the protein is very similar to the quinoa. To get 2.5 grams of leucine, you'd have to overconsume by 200 grams of nuts on a day-to-day basis from peanuts, and that would be over 1,000 calories, which doesn't mean an effective protein source on a day-to-day basis. Other great ones are eggs. Whey protein powder is literally 1 scoop of protein, or whey isolate is over 2.5 to 3 grams of protein. It's most effective. And anything dairy related in high quantities is absolutely great from a leucine perspective. So ones that you can just take off your list straight away of calling it a protein source: peanut butter, almonds, oats, lentils, quinoa, chickpeas. You're not going to get the protein required to get what you need for muscle building. If you just want protein to maintain health and you want to help with cognitive function, immune function, hair, skin and nails, you don't need to worry about the leucine content. That's why when we look at our traditional diets with our clients, if they're not massive on building muscle tissue, we still utilize the chanas, the rajmas, the chiles, the dosas, sambars with lower protein, because they don't want the muscle tissue, so we can get all the other benefits as well as not chasing leucine. And that's really important to note, that they're not bad. These are not bad food sources. They're just not what you need to build muscle tissue. Now, most people need to build muscle tissue because as you age, your muscle tissue goes down and your bone density decreases. You need to be fighting that with every inch so that you don't end up when you're 80 breaking a leg, a hip, a fracture, or being under muscle to the point where it's painful, more injuries, and you restrict your quality of life. In my earlier years before as a personal trainer and anything to do with fitness, I would go with my mum to work, and she used to run an elderly people's home, and I used to go in there every single day as a work experience with the team of nurses and see all these patients who are 80, 85, 90 with fractured hips, where they'd fell over, or frozen shoulders, or fractured tibias, whichever the bone was that fractured. It was so interesting to see the discrepancies between the people that recovered well and the people that didn't recover well, because when you speak to people enough, you realize what type of person or what life they live. Some of the people that were admitted had never moved a muscle in their life. They were super sedentary, they weren't active when they were younger, they weren't active at all in their later lives, and they would just wait at home for their friends and family to come around and be waited on hand and foot because they weren't that active. These are the ones that when they broke the neck of their femur, which is the little part between the ball and socket joint and then the rest of the bone of the femur, this part, it would snap in two when they fell over. These are the ones that would end up with UTIs or infections, or actually some of them passed away because of the infection that got too bad because they weren't active, they weren't mobile, they weren't drinking water, they weren't hydrating, and it all comes down to the lack of movement. Most people got a UTI or a urinary tract infection because they didn't want to drink water because they had to go and walk to the toilet. And when you don't want to go and walk to the toilet because you're not active and you don't want to do the rehabilitation process because you don't value activity and exercise, you then have a part of you where you have potential for this urinary tract infection. This one time that I seen a UTI get so bad because this woman wouldn't drink water, she wouldn't exercise, she wouldn't do anything after the injury. She got straight jacket, you know, the one with the white collars where they don't let you move your hands. She got that escorted out of the building because she was going so crazy and delusional because of the UTI. And in those moments, I recognized how important it was to stay active and mobile when you're older, but it starts when you're younger. And the reason why I'm starting with muscle building as a form of that is because this movement where I'm moving my knee up requires hip mobility and hip strength. If you don't have any muscle, you won't be able to do that. And guess what? This movement here is the precursor to not falling over when you're older, to not breaking your femur, which is one of the reasons why most people pass away when you're older, life-threatening injuries and breaking bones and hips and fractures. That whole traumatic process is not ideal. So starting by being strong and having the muscle tissue, by eating more leucine-based food, can stop the whole of that bollocks from happening long term. Back to the protein sources after a little bit of a venture away. They're not all of the ones that you should be eating, but you should be utilizing these frameworks of having and changing your opinion on what your diet needs to get the results that you want to get. Most South Asian diets are not constructed in a way where it's protein first or protein heavy, or at least in the protein servings that actually create that leucine, which creates that muscle building. And if you want that outcome, you have to change how you view food and how you view your meals to get more leucine out of it. Now, this will be a behavior change, and this will be something that a lot of people don't end up making those changes. They get stuck in their South Asian ways. They're like, I have to eat this, I have to eat that, I have to eat this. And then they get discouraged by the muscle that they don't have, or the effects that that's happening on their hair, skin and nails, and they're wondering why that's happening. It's because you're not listening to the advice. That's why. But having some of these foods and going through the process of tracking it, understanding what it looks like from a leucine perspective, having protein at every single meal, and doing the strategy that I outlined with having either 3 meals or 4 meals and getting them of high protein, high leucine meals. Don't be mistaken for high protein marketing. If you ever walk down an aisle and you've seen the word high protein, high fiber, healthy, just know that a bodybuilder doesn't need to tell you he's a bodybuilder because you see the muscle. Same way that when you walk down an aisle, you don't need to be told what high protein sources of food are because you know they're high protein sources. If the marketing tells you it's high protein, it's more than likely not. If they have to scream and shout that their product is high protein, it's probably bullshit claims. You don't see on the packet of chicken high protein. No, because chicken is high protein. That's what it is. You don't need to tell everybody about it. So if you see these biscuits that are high protein, or you see these bagels that are high protein, and you look on the back and you see what they're made out of, remember, you're looking for high leucine foods that have dairy, that's whey, that's eggs, that's chicken, that's basically tuna, all of the things that we just spoke about there. And if it doesn't come from soy, tempeh, seitan, and then those other sources like whey and dairy, then they're not high protein. They're just fake protein intakes, like the protein in that's lentils. It's not going to give you the leucine to be able to get that back. So don't fall into that pattern, because you're going to be eating protein and then get discouraged by the results that you're not getting because you've believed the package as opposed to chasing leucine content. What I would recommend you doing is, when you're in a dieting phase, don't really bother about tracking your leucine, tracking your food. I think there's more problems, and that's a different video altogether. You should just have a structure with your food and have high protein dinners. And lunches and breakfast. That's it. But when you move into a muscle building phase, and that is the purpose of this, you sit on a Sunday, you make your meals with the high protein food sources, you check your leucine content, you check these things once a week, you make the meals for the week ahead, or you plan ahead and you structure your week ahead, and then you don't have to miss. That's the easiest way to go through protein and get familiar with what it's like. The next problem that you're going to encounter is adjusting to eating high protein diets. Within the South Asian community, you haven't been accustomed to it all of the time. There's now people in their 20s that are South Asian that are now spending, their teens and their early years accommodating to that high protein gym lifestyle that people want to have, health and fitness. But if you're in your 30s and you're more than likely from a traditional background, or you just haven't been exposed to more eating protein consistently, that rise and that change is going to be really difficult to accommodate. You may get some extra farts. You might feel extra full. You might feel unnatural to be able to have 250 grams of tofu in a meal. It might feel weird to have egg whites and eggs to get more than 25 grams of protein. And it'll definitely feel weird to go from your little dollop of yogurt on a meal like sabzi, dal and rice to then having 200 grams of yogurt with berries and banana to get a high dosage of protein in as a snack, for example. But just because it's unfamiliar, just because it's new, and just because it's not how you had it before, doesn't mean it's wrong. Keeping some of your core philosophies in the way that you like to enjoy food, but then adopting these strategies alongside it and building that up over time to building these numbers up will always be the way. If science shows us that you need to get this leucine in, if science shows us what protein is and what protein isn't, we can't ignore that just because we have preferences. And if you've enjoyed this video about protein, I want you to watch this video about why South Asians normally can't get in shape. If you've struggled with your protein and you want to look at how you can drop fat, this is the video for you.